Live
Okay.
in
Getting closer.
1, 2.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Thursday's Spiritual Matters here at the Daily Huddle. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. Today's topic is the sacred gift of grief. And it seems to be all the more relevant and all the more important as days go by. So we'll talk about it. We'll continue the family meeting that we started last week. How about that? And I have a quote for you in regards to that today, which is love and grief are two sides of the same coin. One does not and cannot exist without the other. They are the yin and yang of our lives. Grief is predicated on our capacity to give and receive love. Some people choose not to love and so never grieve. If we allow ourselves the grace that comes with love, however, we must allow ourselves the grace that is required to mourn, by Dr. Alan Wolfett. And so, welcome to Spiritual Matters Thursdays at the Daily Huddle.
Recording in progress.
Sorry, there was no sound.
That's all right. We made it work. We made it work. And we know what the drums sound like. So we just played it in our minds. So
I don't know what happened. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Bye.
Let's get grounded in today's now moments. Rashida, where are you and who are you hugging today?
Good morning, everyone. I am at my palace in my mansion. I would love to hug, and I'm going to hug, after I hug my tree, I'm going to hug my grandkids. My grandkid is having a new brother coming on the way, so I am grounded, having to babysit.
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And Chase, what are you thankful for?
Grand day all. I am thankful for music.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, indeed. Music is the great panacea, isn't it?
Exactly.
Awesome, awesome. All right, and Giovanni, what time is it where you are and how are you? Hey, there it is.
The time is the time is now. The time is now. And what was the other question?
And how are you?
Oh, I am the way I say I am. And today I say I am shy. Today I am shy.
Oh,
yes.
That's a new one for you. We like it.
I'm taking it on.
We like it.
That's because Rashida don't call them handsome.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. He got a little blush there. He got a little thing.
That's what a good one. Sharon, I like that.
That's fantastic. Guys, we oh, something's happening with my camera, but I'm still I wanted to talk about the sacred gift of grief today because I feel responsible. I feel like somebody has to say it. Maybe it's because I am used to being the eldest daughter in the family. I am the eldest of 3 in my family. And I am also the first in the cousins. I have a lot of cousins, and in all of them, and some of them are super, super older than me by like decades, and some of them are super, super younger than me by decades. So I'm kind of in the middle, but I am the first one that lived in the United States for an amount of time and came back to tell the tale. And so that's why I was making a big deal of you being in my home country, Giovanni, Dominican Republic. And so taking on that role of being like the eldest daughter in my family and also like the Americanized cousin in my larger family, I'm gonna take a stand and say, we need to talk about grief. Sometimes it is easier to talk about individual grief and just make it somebody's individual problem. But we have not as a society given ourselves the space, the room, and the permission to have collective grief. We've not allowed, or even if it doesn't, if the grief does not belong to us necessarily, but just to witness somebody else being in their grief. We feel awkward about it. It's embarrassing a little bit, and we just would rather look away or would rather say platitudes like, you know, God doesn't give you anything more than you can bear, or everything happens for a reason, and things that end up actually infuriating the grieving person more so than nourishing them. And so I want to talk about the sacred gift of grief because on the one hand, we don't like why we have it, right? It's because there's been some kind of loss that has happened, which is why we grieve. Sometimes the devastating, horrific loss, such as what we see happening right now with the Israeli and Palestinian conflict that has come to a boiling point. It's been boiling for quite some time. And sometimes it happens not because of loss, but because of shame or missed opportunities. Sometimes we grieve a life we could have had and didn't have because we didn't take certain steps or because we didn't speak up, et cetera, et cetera. And so we grieve for what never was, or a love that never was, a career that never was, a talent that was never developed, and that kind of thing. And then culturally, we've not created space to grieve some of that collective loss. When we speak about, for example, patriarchy or misogyny, or we talk about white supremacy theology, I'm gonna call it theology. We speak of it often vilifying the oppressor, vilifying the perpetrator of the diminishing of rights. But it hurts them too. You know, people think patriarchy or misogyny is an offense and a suppression of women, but it also deeply diminishes men. White supremacy very directly oppresses the global majority and melanated folks, but it also deeply suppresses white folks. And in the same way, whenever there is a conflict, like we have with the Israeli and Palestinian conflict right now, we can very clearly see who is victims because we can see who's bloody, we can see who's dead, we can see who has experienced loss, we can see who's suffering. But the people inflicting the pain are suffering as well. And that's the thing that we don't talk about. It takes a severe and consistent dehumanization of self in order for you to be able to dehumanize another human being, because that's not our natural default function. Our natural default position is not there. And so when we grieve, it's an opportunity to come back to our humanity. It's an opportunity to come back to what connects us individually and as a whole. You know, we all share this planet together. And so in a way, it's a little bit like the shared space that you share with people who live in the same block as the ones that live in your house, like the same block that your house is on, right? Like we're all neighbors. In that way, in a grander scale of things, anybody that we share the planet with is our neighbor as well, is our brother as well, even though we may not see them, right? Sometimes I think about, for example, in my neighborhood, I live on a hill. And when I go for a walk, typically I come down the hill because it's easier to start and to warm up by taking the downward slope than it is taking the upward slope. So I don't often see the neighbors that live up the street. I usually see the folks that live down the street. And I say hello, and their dogs see me and they wag their tail and they bark and da-da-da. And there's a little bit more proximity and friendship, I guess, and visibility with my downward neighbors than it is with my upward neighbors. But they exist and they're there. And I feel the same way with us as a global community. There are some people that you don't see all the time, that you only hear about in the neighborhood newsletter, as it were. But they're connected to you as well. And so the gift that grief gives us is an opportunity to reconnect to our own humanity, to recognize the humanity of another, and to give sacred space to our loss. Here in the United States, we have not allowed ourselves permission to collectively grieve the lives that we lost during the pandemic, or how it shifted family dynamics, economics, job opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. There's been a lot of shifts that we were not prepared for, and we're just kind of like rolling with the punches and just living life. And sometimes we'll wear masks, and sometimes we won't, and sometimes we'll get on a plane, and sometimes we won't, and sometimes we'll, boost the vaccine, and sometimes we won't, or whatever it is. It's like we are in another dimension right now, and we haven't grieved the fact that we lost some stuff, we lost some people, we lost some manner of living in that way when we decided to jump timelines in this way collectively. And I grieve. I grieve for us, I grieve for myself, I grieve for the planet, I grieve for the neighbors that I don't get to see every day, and whose lives maybe don't touch me directly every day. But I always mention this movie, Inside Out, because it is, even though it's an animated, cartoonish kind of geared towards children movie, it perfectly illustrates the idea that our sadness and our grief, instead of being an inconvenient emotion, it actually opens up the invitation and the connection to other human beings. And so I'm going to open up the floor, and I want to know from you what your relationship with grief is, or has been, or what you want it to be moving forward. And what tools do you use to manage it, to deal with it? I'll answer the question by saying my relationship with grief is I don't like being in it, because I don't like what it took to get me there. I don't like the loss. I don't like the opportunity that I didn't see, or the shame that I feel, or whatever the case may be. But once I'm in it, the tools that I use to deal are crying, journaling, talking it out, and also seeking other people who are going through their grief so I can comfort them, because sometimes comforting somebody else in their grief makes my grief easier to deal with. So let's talk family. I see, Gio, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. You know, as you were creating the possibility of this conversation, I was realizing that as I really started looking, like before, at the beginning, I was sort of not being in the conversation. I was trying to conceptualize this conversation, like just like read about grief in the dictionary.
Yeah,
I didn't want to look.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started looking, then I started resisting it. Then I didn't like this conversation anymore. I wanted to go home. I wanted to grab my marbles and go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized I haven't grieved in a long time. I haven't grieved a real loss in a long time. Now, what I was expressing is that there are two kinds of griefs for me. Then there is the loss of the people in my life. Then 3 types. Then there is the grieving I'm doing now for the way I see the world. And I have given myself permission to see my neighbor's pain a little bit as my pain. So I've been grieving that, and the way it's showing up is as an upset, like the emotions of upset. And then there is another one I wanted to mention to you that I have grieved, which is to see my life going in the direction I didn't I didn't create for myself. Like
Mhm.
there's a, like I see my life going into another, in certain areas, in a direction in which I remember grieving.
Mhm.
Like, oh, that, I did not want that to happen. Or I did not create that. Now I got to go deal with those cards.
Mhm.
Anyway, I wanted to bring that also there. The way I deal with it is, in some degree, is there's nothing I can do. So wait until it all makes sense, sort of.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a very soothing idea too, that it can make sense, that it will make sense, and that you get to see that because those we always talk about auditing our assumptions, right? There's so many assumptions that we make in that statement. It's like, oh yeah, and we like those assumptions. They feel very soothing. I like living there. I like it. Thank you so much. Rashida, you got something?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ogando, for the topic. Once you started just the word of the love and the happiness and the yin and yang, I started to just go into myself, deep down into myself. And why I say that is because I went back way far, like I would say 45 years ago. That was the last loss that we have in the family. That was my brother. I'm matter of fact, no, 43 years ago, not 45 years ago, 43 years ago. And I remember the last time I saw my brother was like, I would say 18 months before he passed. And I was the person who they chose to go to the morgue. And I said, why me?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying this and I'm telling this story because I didn't able to. I didn't have the guts. I didn't have the know how to go about it. And why I'm saying this is because I want just to see. I want to remember him and still remember him as the last time we hug and kiss and he bite on my cheek and I left that way. I would say 18 months before he passed. And when they choose me to go to the morgue and I did the body, I said, no, not me. Why me? And I'm asking a question because in my mind, I want to remember him as the last time I saw him. And remembering the bite he bit me on my cheek. And all and behold, the universe and the old setting sent my papa, my father, to come to the morgue. And he said, do you really identify the body? I said, no, because you got to identify the body. And it saved me from that grief that I was seeing myself and just I could not even pinpoint the feeling I was going to have seeing my brother and that stretcher and that drawer.
Yeah.
So I saying this because I remember my grandfather says to me as teachers, never you go to bed angry, never you go to bed unhappy, never you go to bed unease. Just make peace. Not so much with the person around you, but make peace with yourself.
Yes.
So when you start to say about the yin and yang, I was like, ooh.
Yes.
She digging into my skin. So
Right.
definitely, I am saying that I am doing things and I'm materializing things that as I speak, and I do the right thing, not to be able to regret tomorrow. Oh, I should have done that. I should have said goodbye to that person. No, I make peace at all time with the person and with myself. Thank you so much for the topic, Dr. Ogando. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for your share. That was beautiful. Laura says in the chat, I used to shut down rather than grieve, but now I write, I cry, I talk, and forgiveness work to release my grief. Yeah, I like those too, Laura. I use them a lot. I think it is also important to, I don't know, I think that there's a balance between letting grief be and then making it work, giving it something to do. Because sometimes when I let grief be, it could feel like I'm drowning in a sea of emotions that I don't necessarily, that get worse and worse, and I tend to catastrophize and et cetera, et cetera. So that's when operationalizing my grief becomes useful. I hate to use that word, but that's the most accurate one. To give it something to do, right? I remember a mentor of mine when I was very, very young, in my early 20s, he used to say, when in doubt, focus out. And what he meant by that was that when you're feeling all cruddy like that, then give to somebody, serve somebody, focus on somebody else, focus out. And that will support you in whatever sadness, grief, anger, whatever it is that you're going through. It'll support you and nourish you as you're nourishing another. And I haven't found a time when that's been wrong in the decades after he has shared that. Now there's somebody that says Samsung SM, and I don't know the names, but you have your hand up. Who would that be?
It's CC.
Hey, Cece.
Hey, I love the subject, the conversation about grief and upsetness. I am choosing several things. One is to forgive right away. And when I'm not experiencing the forgiveness within, you know how you can say, oh, I forgive you. Well, I don't want to fake it. Sometimes I fast and pray. I read inspirational materials such as the Bible. I pray a lot. I write a lot. And I want to forgive a lot because I know I'm not perfect and God has forgiven me from so many different things that who am I not to forgive somebody or not to release the anger, because releasing it actually benefits me more than the person doing the offense. So today I'm learning to be well. And I also use counselors, professional licensed counselors, to help me process through whatever I'm not, agreeable with in my mind, because it's all my own thinking. And so today I desire to have a clean heart and love people sincerely, love my family, friends, and everyone. So thank you so much for letting me share. I pass.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. I think that it is such a great opportunity to have a conversation with others, to share with others. One of the things that we inculcate here in this community as the Daily Huddle family is doing things in communities. Why we meet every day at 9 a.m. Eastern. You could do your own little meditation thing and your own little start the day thing and motivation and blah, blah, blah. We could all do that on our individual tracks, but it's so much more powerful when we do it in community. And that's true with any kind of human experience. Grieving is somehow more, what's the English word for llevadero, Giovanni? It's so much more like, I can do this, I can survive this, I can walk through this because I'm locked arm in arm with my family, with my friends, with people who support me and nourish me. It's the same about anger, it's the same about sadness, it's the same about any human emotion. That's my position about that. And my challenge to all of you, I'm fond of giving homework. The teacher in me is fond of giving homework. My challenge to all of you is that thing that has been gnawing at you in your heart, whether it's a sense of loss, a sense of grief, a sense of missed opportunity, a sense of I didn't do enough, I didn't say enough, I didn't act soon enough, or whatever that not enoughness thing is that you're grieving. Bring that to your mind, clarify it in your language, and then forgive yourself and speak to it, whether you're speaking to yourself out loud but as you're driving in the car, or as Laura suggested that she writes, or even having that in a conversation with someone that you trust. To release sometimes requires revealing ugliness that you may not necessarily want to reveal, which is why we suppress so much, right? In order to heal a wound, we must first disinfect it. And sometimes that means taking the pus out and taking the gunk out and ugliness stuff that we don't necessarily want to look at, right? However, it is a very necessary first step in order for you to be able to reconnect with your wholeness. Not that the wholeness ever went away, but that in order for us to be connected to it again, we must release this thing that we're suppressing or ignoring or letting it fester. So that's my invitation to you today. And it's okay to take a moment and shake it off or to cry. We have physical, biological responses to grief. If you've ever seen an animal on the other side of an uncomfortable or painful situation, they almost always are shaking. Even our dogs, they shake after a shower. Their showers are not pleasant for them, We might not say that they're traumatizing, but they're not pleasant. And so they're shaking the water off, and so I challenge you, shake it off and give yourself the space to clarify, articulate, and release. And it may not be like a one and done situation, but it certainly does begin the process of release. And my invitation to you is that peace of mind and that peace of heart, you deserve to live in it and not just see glimpses of it. So as always, love generously, laugh, and sleep more. Get 7 hours of sleep at least per night. Stress less, eat more plant-based food, move your body, shake your tail feather. Remember that twerking is a Kundalini raising experience. I don't know if we're gonna be able to add that one to our list. And always audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, as Ice Cube is fond of saying. We love you. Thank you for coming to the Daily Huddle. See you next time. Oh, there she is.
Dr. Ogando, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.